Mandy gazed at the impeccably dressed man before her, his words lingering in her thoughts. "Amanda Black, you've been served," he had said with a hint of regret. The office fell silent, as if time had frozen momentarily. Holding the paper in her hand, Mandy felt it was a death sentence for a 5-year marriage. With a soft sob, she sank into a nearby chair, clutching the document. Gradually, the office began to stir back to life. The stares, whispers, and disapproving glances intensified. Then, Mandy heard her friend Kit's gentle voice beside her. "Come on, Mandy," Kit said, taking her arm and helping her to her feet. "Let's move to a conference room away from this spotlight." The dark-haired woman guided Mandy away from the prying eyes of their colleagues. Observers noted how Mandy transformed from a vivacious, carefree blonde to a defeated figure in mere moments. Some found irony in the situation, while others felt pity. Most suspected the underlying reason behind the divorce papers. "How? I don't understand," Mandy stuttered, her voice trembling. Things were finally getting better. Clutching herself for support, Mandy searched for strength. Kit wrapped her arm around her, offering comfort. "I don't know, Mandy," Kit replied softly. "Did Eric give any indication? Any hint this was coming?" "Quite the opposite," Mandy managed to say amid her sobs. "It felt like we were newlyweds again. I thought he was compensating for all the time he spent overseas." Kit winced imperceptibly, but Mandy noticed. As Mandy reflected on the past 4 months of her marriage, she remembered how passionate and intense their sex life had become since Eric returned from Afghanistan. It surpassed even their intimacy after his return from Iraq 2.5 years earlier. She smiled sadly, wiping away a tear. "It's been so intense and exhilarating. When I returned from that business trip last week," Mandy's smile grew slightly. "Oh my God, Kit, Eric exhausted me. We were so consumed that I ended up begging him to stop." Her smile faded as she saw the concern in her friend's eyes. "No. Nothing happened during that trip. I told you it was over," she insisted. Kit nodded solemnly, her expression serious. In a calm tone, she asked, "When was the last time Eric held you or simply spent time kissing and caressing you, Mandy? Sweetheart, when was the last time he made love to you tenderly?" Mandy sat in a daze, staring at Kit. "What?" With a determined sigh, Kit looked at her friend before continuing bluntly, "Mandy, was he making love to you or just having sex with you?" Mandy's hands covered her face as she wept uncontrollably. Why would he do this? Why now? Panic surged through her as she considered the worst possibility. Could he know? Slowly, she raised her head, a look of dread etched on her features. "Oh God, Kit," she whispered, her voice trembling, "he knows. Please, no. Please, no." Tears welled up in Kit's eyes as she embraced her distraught friend. If Eric truly knew, things would escalate quickly, and they wouldn't be pretty. Meanwhile, Eric nodded as he listened to the conversation on his cell phone. "Thank you, sir," he finally responded upon learning that his wife had been served and the incriminating evidence had been delivered. Ending the call, he turned his attention to his laptop. With a simple click, he initiated the process that would alter his unfaithful wife's life irreversibly. This would be a moment she'd never forget, he thought to himself as he dialed another number. "Hello, this is HR," greeted a cheerful voice on the other end. "How may I assist you?" "Mr. Davis, please," Eric requested calmly. "This is Eric Black." "Mr. Black," the receptionist exclaimed. "Let me transfer you right away." After a brief conversation with Mr. Davis, marked by an underlying tension, Eric ended the call with a heavy sigh. Glancing at his phone, he noticed 5 missed calls from his wife. Not yet, he thought, bracing himself. A sharp knock interrupted the silence in the conference room. Kit recognized the trio waiting outside, Mr. Samuels, Mr. Davis, and Anna Prescott, their supervisor. Mr. Davis appeared visibly agitated, his face flushed with anger. "Ms. Garnett, we need to speak with Ms. Black," Mr. Samuels addressed Kit solemnly. "Thank you for your assistance, but please return to your desk." As they entered the room, Mandy's heart raced. Clutching the manila envelope Mr. Davis had given her, she hurried out to the parking lot. Inside were damning photographs of her with Sean Thompson, a manager from the third floor. Mr. Davis summarized his conversation with Eric, who threatened to expose the company's failure to enforce its code of conduct policy. Eric intended to discuss this matter with his soon-to-be ex-wife before deciding on any legal actions. Mr. Davis advised Mandy to go home and talk to her husband to prevent the situation from escalating further. He also informed her that they would meet with Sean next, and they would discuss her future with the company after she had spoken with Eric. Still overcome with tears, Mandy struggled to locate her car in the bright sunlight. Her black Hyundai Santa Fe stood out, but her blurred vision made it difficult to spot. As she got into the car, memories of the arguments with Eric before he left for Afghanistan flooded her mind. He had reluctantly agreed to lease the car for her just before his deployment. Wiping her tears and putting on her sunglasses, Mandy set off for home. Nearby, a man in an old Chevy sedan made a call on his cell phone. "Thanks, Bob," Eric spoke calmly into his phone. "No, that's all. Please let Ron know you guys did a great job and deserve the bonus. Thanks again. Goodbye." Glancing at his laptop, Eric let out another sigh. Just one more call, he thought, and there would be no turning back. But did he even want to turn back? All he had left was a broken marriage and a wife who had betrayed him. Eric shook his head and took out a prepaid cell phone. This last call needed to be untraceable. He dialed quickly and waited, his emotions hidden behind a mask of calmness. Meanwhile, Mandy navigated the traffic on the interstate, frustrated by the delay. She reflected on her marriage and the slim chance of salvaging it. Eric had discovered her affair, and the timing, while he was serving in Afghanistan, only made matters worse. Despite the slim odds, she felt compelled to try to save their relationship because she still loved him. Funny way of showing it, she chided herself, cheating on him not once, but both times he had gone overseas to serve his country. She shook her head quickly, as if trying to push back the guilt and shame, but the tears began flowing again. Trust was a scarce commodity for Eric, a product of his difficult childhood. His father had abandoned him and his alcoholic mother when he was young. In their 5 years of marriage, Mandy had only seen Eric's mother twice, once at their wedding and once when their son was born. It had taken years for Eric to trust Mandy. When they met in college, she knew he was a soldier, and she believed she had accepted that. He had already served 2 active years and was on track to receive his engineering degree. They dated for a year before Eric proposed, but she could still hear her father's reaction. "No, Mandy, this isn't about Eric," her father had said. "I think he'll be a great husband. It's about you. Being a military spouse is tough. It's hard to be a good husband or wife when your spouse is away for long periods." Mandy's father, Mike Lomax, had served in the Navy, and she remembered the fights her parents had during his deployments. She knew her father didn't want that life for her. "You were right, Daddy," Mandy sniffed. "I made a terrible soldier's wife." After buying a nice starter home and settling into a good engineering job, Eric's deployment changed everything. When he left for Iraq, Mandy was 4 months pregnant, and she couldn't hide her frustration at being left alone. As she navigated through traffic, Mandy remembered the loneliness of those days without Eric. Her parents had helped, but nothing filled the void of his absence. She longed for his presence, his comforting words, but he wasn't there. Moving in with her mother before the baby was born helped, but there were still unanswered questions about her parents' marriage during her father's Navy service that her mother refused to discuss. Eric's brief return home on R&R after their son's birth gave Mandy the glimpse of normalcy, but it was short-lived. He left again just 10 days later, leaving her alone once more. Her mother had noticed some signs and had urged her not to give in to them. She often warned about the consequences of making mistakes that could damage many lives. Though she never went into detail, Mandy suspected her father might have had an affair. They were cordial and friendly but lacked passion, more like friends sharing a house. Mandy battled depression and loneliness after giving birth. Returning to work initially helped, but then she was paired with Sean Thompson on a project. While Eric had a rugged, boy-next-door charm, Sean exuded the aura of a male model. His smooth voice and captivating smile made Mandy's heart race whenever he entered the room. He exuded confidence and had a magnetic presence. She knew Sean was married to a wealthy socialite from New York, whom she met at a company event. Despite her beauty and charm, Mandy found Sean's allure irresistible. Their flirtation escalated into a full-blown affair during a 2-day business trip with the project team. They met a few more times before Mandy ended it before Eric's return. When Eric came back, he seemed different. The carefree part of him had faded, likely due to the challenges he faced during his tour. Mandy vividly remembered the heartbreaking call from him after a tragic incident where his friends were killed and injured in an IED explosion. She struggled to console him, feeling the weight of her recent affair with Sean. In the months following Eric's return, Mandy devoted herself to comforting him, hoping to restore him to his former self. Despite her love for Eric, her affair with Sean haunted her, especially as Eric prepared for another deployment to Afghanistan, leaving her devastated. Predictably, 2 months after Eric's departure, Mandy found herself seeking solace in Sean's arms again. She knew it was inexcusable, but her loneliness and fear outweighed her guilt. She pursued Sean once more, using all her charms to lure him away from the marketing colleague he had been involved with since their previous affair ended. Flushed with shame, Mandy berated herself for her actions. Despite her remorse, tears streamed down her face, fueled by self-loathing. Sean had spent several weekends at her house, even arranging for them to work on another project together. Briefly, Mandy entertained thoughts of leaving Eric, but reality intervened. During a tense trip to Fort Bragg to meet Eric during his R&R, Mandy's worries dissolved when she reunited with him. Their time together reaffirmed her love for him and their commitment to their family. Recalling those moments, Mandy smiled weakly, reminiscing about Eric's passion and tenderness. His decision not to re-enlist and return to civilian life filled her with joy, signaling the prospect of a complete family reunion. Upon returning from Fort Bragg, Mandy ended all contact with Sean, despite his frustration and anger. She sought help for her depression and began therapy and medication, gradually feeling stronger mentally and emotionally. Determined to be the best wife for Eric, she poured her heart into preparing for his return. When Eric finally came back, Mandy fulfilled her vows, dedicating herself entirely to him. However, despite her efforts, she sensed a difference in Eric's demeanor, attributing it to his experiences overseas. Now, she realized he may have already known about her affair, a terrifying revelation. Eric sat solemnly, observing the rain outside, waiting for Mandy's return. As her SUV inched through traffic on the laptop screen, he knew it was time to make a crucial call, possibly the last conversation with the woman he had loved deeply for 6 years. Mandy's hands tightened on the steering wheel as her phone rang. Seeing Eric's name, she braced herself, offering a silent plea before answering. "Eric?" "Yeah, it's me," came his curt reply. "Please, Eric," she began, fighting back tears, "let me explain, let me tell you how sorry I am." "Baby?" Silence followed, broken only by Mandy's shaky breaths. "Eric, are you still there?" she asked softly. "Yeah, for now," his response was sharp. "Where are you? Are you with Randy?" Mandy's voice trembled with concern. "I don't have a home, Mandy," Eric's words held a fleeting trace of pain. "You took care of that." "Where are you?" "It doesn't matter, just waiting." "For me?" Hope tinged Mandy's voice. "Like you waited for me, honey?" Eric's bitterness cut through her heart. Tears welled up as Mandy struggled to speak. His pain and anger were palpable, directed squarely at her. "Eric, please, there's so much to say. I've messed up, I know. But I need to talk to you, to explain. I love you, baby, only you." Silence lingered before Eric relented. "All right, Mandy, speak your piece. But don't expect it to change anything. You've been with someone else while I've been away. So what could you possibly say? Please, Eric, for us?" Mandy pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "Don't give up on us before we talk, please." "Giving up?" Eric's voice dripped with scorn. "Like you did?" "No." Mandy's voice cracked, desperation evident. I know what I did, but I never gave up. I was scared and alone. I love you, Eric. I believe in us. Are you serious? Eric's disbelief was palpable. How can you say that after what you've done? As Mandy navigated through traffic, her tears flowed unchecked. She yearned to face him, to show him her remorse. Eric's bitterness intensified. I discovered you cheated while I was overseas. Lucky for us both it wasn't while I was home. I might have lost control. He sighed heavily. Amanda, this will be our final conversation. If we're disconnected or put on hold, there won't be another chance to talk. Eric, please, she begged. We can seek counseling. We can work through this, baby, I know we can. He pressed on. There are some things you should know before you return home. Firstly, I've emptied our accounts and maxed out the credit cards. You've hurt me for 3 years, so I'm returning the favor. Her gasp went unnoticed. You can have the house, as I'm sure his scent still lingers in our bed. I've taken what I want, it fit into one suitcase, the rest is yours. Keep your SUV, though I doubt you'll afford it after tomorrow when you're likely fired. I've shared those photos with your colleagues, family, friends, even our church. They're also on various porn sites along with your details. You'll probably become quite popular soon. Oh, Eric, no, Mandy sobbed. Why? Why didn't you wait for us to talk? I did wait, Mandy, he replied calmly. 4 months after my return, but you stayed silent. You wouldn't have spoken if you hadn't been caught, right, baby? She had no response. He was right. As for your lover, Eric sneered, I almost paid him a visit. But after meeting his wife, I think it's unnecessary. She's quite vindictive. You might want to warn Sean. His wife's family has some unsavory connections. He might not make it through the year unscathed, along with his lovers. Including you. Eric, please, let me make it up to you, please. Mandy's phone beeped, showing Mrs. Johnson's call from next door. I warned you, Mandy, Eric's tone turned menacing. If you disconnect, it's over. Okay, baby, she replied softly. I thought something happened to Randy. He's fine, Eric's voice softened. He's with me, asleep. Mandy relaxed, letting Mrs. Wilcox's call go to voicemail. About Victoria Thompson, he continued calmly, while you were away on your business trip last week. Another buzz interrupted, another neighbor's call. Mrs. Wilcox again, sweetheart, Mandy said, growing uneasy. Are you sure Randy's okay? Yes, we're both fine, Eric's eerie tone made Mandy nervous. He chuckled darkly. Regarding Victoria Thompson, while you and your lover were busy, I got acquainted with his wife, closely. Mandy's heart sank, feeling the sting of betrayal from her husband's confession. Tears flowed anew. I wish I could say she's better in bed than you, but she's not, he uttered. Between her complaints and demands, it sucked all the enjoyment out of it. I bet Sean would agree. So, congrats, Mandy, you've won the Best Laid by a Cheater award. Eric, please stop. Mandy pleaded, tears streaming down her face. Please, just stop. She pounded the steering wheel in frustration, cursing at the sluggish traffic. Okay, Eric, you win, she sniffled. You've had your revenge. You've shattered me. She paused, awaiting his response, but only silence met her ears. But I still love you, Eric, she whispered. I know there's no excuse for what I did, but please, give me a chance to explain. There are medical issues you need to understand. If you ever cared about me, please meet with me. Please, baby. Medical reasons, he scoffed. Postpartum depression? Clinical depression? Bipolar disorder? How about post-traumatic stress disorder? But in the end, does it matter? You still slept with someone else. As for how I found out, it doesn't matter. Once I did, I had people surveil you. They did a thorough job, tapping phones and planting cameras in our house, even in our bedroom. Eric, please, she sobbed, do you hate me this much? Is there any love left? There was, he murmured, until I saw that video of you and him in our bed. Remember when Randy walked in on you too? Mandy gasped in horror. That moment destroyed any love I had left for you, Eric's voice trembled. I nearly lost it over there, and that's something you can't afford in that place. He glanced at his laptop, seeing Mandy nearing home, a cold smirk forming on his lips. And hurting you, he continued, his tone icy. Amanda, I'm just getting started. I have a few more surprises. Mandy's gasp cut him off. Oh my God, she whispered. Left, he finished. Mandy pulled over, watching in disbelief as flames consumed their home. As I said, Amanda, the house and everything inside is yours. She shook uncontrollably, unable to comprehend what she was seeing. What have you done, Eric? That's more of a rhetorical question, isn't it? Eric retorted with a smirk. I was trained to construct things in combat, Mandy. It stands to reason I might know a thing or two about tearing them down too. Where's Randy? She yelled. Eric, where's my son? Our son is asleep in his car seat, just a few feet from me, he taunted. Can you decipher the message I left on our front yard? What? She stammered. What message? Oh my God. Eric chuckled. I wasn't sure it would be legible from ground level. But the news helicopters should appreciate cheating slut scorched into the lawn. Don't expect much sympathy from the neighbors, he continued. I had those photos plastered around the neighborhood and paid some kids to distribute extra copies. He paused, hearing his wife's sobs. Mandy? You might want to think about where you'll sleep tonight and in the coming days, Eric said bitterly. Maybe you can crash in your SUV until they repo it. Or maybe, no, I doubt Sean will be of help. I'm sure Victoria is tearing him apart. That leaves your parents. What? Mandy whimpered. Really, Mandy? You always suspected your dad of cheating on your mom in the Navy. Turns out, it was your mom who cheated on him. Mom, her voice shook. Eric laughed cruelly. Oh yes. He opened up about it after I returned from Iraq. Why do you think he'd share that? Maybe he suspected his little girl was cheating like her mama did to him? But unlike your dad, Eric continued, I can't live with a cheating wife. Maybe he stayed for you, or maybe he still loved her. That's his choice. Mine is to start over and find someone who can love me, be faithful, and be a good mother to Randy. Please, Eric, Mandy sobbed, I can be that wife. Just give me another chance. I'm already a good mother to Randy. I'm the only mother he needs. That's for the courts to decide, he said calmly. And burning down our house and bankrupting us won't help my case. Eric spotted a young man in a jersey and baseball cap exiting a cab. He flashed his headlights twice, signaling the kid to approach. Listen carefully, Mandy, Eric spoke calmly, glancing at his watch. There are a few things you need to know, and time is short. Firstly, don't think my threats will sway your employers. However, Victoria is pursuing a similar lawsuit and stands a good chance of winning with the evidence I've provided her. As for me, Eric paused, clearing his throat, I don't fancy my odds in court, so I've accepted a job overseas. I believe Randy and I will find it rather enjoyable. No. Mandy's voice pierced through the phone. You can't take my baby. Actually, he's my son, and legally I can, Eric retorted. Eric, please, Mandy pleaded, desperation in her voice, he's my son too. Amanda, Eric's tone remained calm, he'll forget about you in a few years. I don't recall my own father. But don't fret, I'll send you photos of him at Christmas and we'll call on Mother's Day and his birthday. Since we won't have your whereabouts, we'll contact your parents. Mandy wept bitterly, grasping the gravity of her situation. Eric sat in silence, grappling with a mix of concern and discomfort over his own actions. He knew he had no intention of following through with the promised calls and photos. The thought of her waiting in vain for communication haunted him. Goodbye, Amanda, Eric's voice turned cold. I hope you find solace in your torment. As he hung up, her hysterical screams echoed in his mind. Captain Black, the young man in the jersey interrupted. No longer, Eric managed a weak smile. Just Eric Black. At least for a little while. The teenager handed him a manila envelope containing account details and passports for Marcus and Michael Gray. Eric's smile widened as he tossed his old IDs and cell phone remnants into a dumpster. Feels liberating, Eric grinned, passing the hammer and lighter to the young man. Please thank Bob and Ron for the rental. Who? The teenager asked, beaming. My mistake, Eric chuckled. Must have confused them. Minutes later, Marcus Gray and his son checked in for their flight, embarking on their new journey. Mr. Gray, the check-in attendant greeted warmly, have a wonderful flight with your son. Marcus Gray and his son walked away, anticipation of new beginnings filling their hearts. Write your opinion in the comments. Thanks for watching and have a great day.